I'm speaking primarily of where the Frankish practices might have originated, with the old Teutonic practices of body division, of blood drinking, blood relics, these things, and even making your own warriors into beef jerky. I'm not joking, by the way.
Yeah.
Why would this practice have developed? Well, I think that you could look at the idea of blood piety as something associated with a perversion of Christian ideas, and in fact, the same notion of the body division, the cutting it up and sending it out in different parts and this kind of stuff, which is actually condemned by one of the popes later on. I think that it's like a perversion of the ideas that are in the church. It's a sort of a crass literalization. And the reason I bring all that up is that it fits exactly into the topics that we've discussed in the past, you and I, where we talked about the Jesuit usage of Sacred Heart. I think this is where they will get this idea, right? This practice of the notion of, well, the heart is the nobler part in the man. Perhaps they've even misunderstood older devotions about the prayer of the heart, as if it's literalized, right? And we have the same weird manifestations in the female Roman Catholic quote unquote saints who think that they're inscribed with things. I was re-listening to an old interview I did, and there's a reference to the Book of Golden Legends, which is one of these fantastical accounts during this the Frankish period, where, like the Song of Roland, you have all these legends and stuff. And somebody actually had something like they cut open the body and there was golden letters written on the heart or something like that, which was being used to justify the practice of heart burial and this kind of, which is a magical practice, basically an older Teutonic magical practice. And the thesis could be that, well, it's an automatic path to sainthood, right? So you have this notion of incorruptibles in the church. And these are all just weird kind of perversions of that, where simpler-minded people, barbarian-minded people, might have been taking things like the idea that the elite have higher levels of their blue bloods, basically. The elite blood is special. Oh, look at the church is doing, like, drinking the blood of Christ. Well, if the elites are a higher, nobler, then we should be drinking the blood of our warriors who went out before us, in battle or something like this. These are pretty, I think, plausible approaches to how those weird devotions, excesses, fetishes developed. And what's interesting is that it doesn't exist in the East. You don't have heart burial. You don't have heart worship. You don't have any of this stuff, which is why we view it as Nestorian.
Yeah. To close off on the Merovingians, I'm just going to add that it's not a theory, it's practiced by our clergy. And when I talked to this with Father Filioque, he said to me that, as you know, we do prayers for the kings of old and the current rulers during the liturgy. And he says that it is a practice in France to pray for all the Merovingian dynasty, basically.
Oh, wow.
So during liturgy, this is a common practice. It's absolutely not a problem. That's something we do. We draw the line at the Carolingians.
Now, when we get into the Carolingians, we have the first instances, as I mentioned, of the claims of making our warriors into beef jerky. We boil the warriors and we cut them up and we send their salted body parts out to other areas. And this is, as I understand, the first claim for a blood relic is Charlemagne in let's see, I wrote it down somewhere. 806, Charlemagne claims to have found a blood relic. And so this whole idea, which, by the way, is still kind of a thing in the Roman Catholic world, where, oh, look, this Eucharist, it just started bleeding, and let's test the DNA to see if it's the blood of Jesus. Oh, maybe it is. All of which is ludicrous, but this is where this starts to happen. I know we're not talking about the heart burial stuff, but it is relevant because these are clear manifestations of a different theology than what's in Byzantium.
Yes, there's a great shift, and it starts not with Charlemagne. It starts with his father, Pepin the Short. So basically, what you need to understand is that at the time, the Merovingian world, the kings don't rule that much. And there's this office called the Mayor of the Palace. And the Mayor of the Palace, starting with Charles Martel, for example, started to take more and more power, and at some point they just overthrew the Merovingians, and that's when you have you have the Carolingian dynasty. The first one who has this transition is Pepin the Short, and what's very interesting is that the Carolingians understood that they didn't have the same understanding of empire. They wanted to be the new empire,
right?
So, and they knew that in order to legitimize the empire, you need to go through religion. And for example, when you look at early church, it goes with having good relations with clergy, major clergy, and it goes with having promoting a new dogma. And we can see that Pepin is going to invade Italy, which at the time was in the hand of the Arian Lombards, and create a state for the papacy. So this is the first breach. So the Pope, who was living under heretical rule, which is fine, we can have this. The Orthodox Bishop of Rome is propelled into this world of politics with the donation of Pepin. So that's in 754. And this is the first act of trying to make the papacy politics, trying to make the papal states. And by the way, at some point, the papal states believed that this was a rule given to them by Constantine with the donation of Constantine. But we're going to cover that forgery, obviously. So this is one of the first problems we see, the first subversion. You have this new kingdom wanting to be an empire, and they're using hierarchs that they didn't interact with so much. Something very interesting, out of all the French kings, only 2 were crowned in Rome by the Pope, and only 1 as the king of the Franks, which was Pepin. Otherwise, it was always done in Reims, where Clovis was back.
So here we have the like you said, this is where the papacy begins. The papacy begins to be caught in the middle of this problem, and this is where the Filioque will come into play as a means or a justification for re-evangelizing and changing the Orthodox East from the vantage point of the Franks.
Exactly. So we talked about Pepin and his son, who really establishes himself as king of the Franks. First of all, finishes the work of Pepin by being crowned emperor. So that's in 800. So he uses the fact that at the time the Byzantine Empire was ruled by a woman. So with a technicality, he used political influence he had on the Pope, and he got crowned emperor. So you have a shift right now. That's when you have new terms appearing. For example, the Greeks. We were never called the Greeks; they were called the Romans.
Romans, yeah, right.
Yeah. Right now, it's the Greeks. The Franks start to delegitimize the East. So they start to become an empire. And how do you solidify your status as a holy emperor? With a new dogma.
Change to the creed.
Yeah. So this change of the creed was made by the Frankish theologians. It's something very interesting. So that's the Council of Aachen. And that's the synod where it's really attested. And they start to create all legends about it. And Chrzestynski is very good at noticing this. That,
yes.
To this day, people would say, "Oh, actually, it was somewhere in Spain to fight the Arians. We needed to add something," which is ridiculous. We don't become Monophysite to fight the Nestorians. But never mind. So they start to create this legend about these Spanish councils, Iberian councils, trying to damn the Arians, just kill the Arians over and over, and establish a true faith. And what Chrzestynski notices is that it's not really true. We have no real attestation of the Council of Toledo really being this damnation for the Arians, but we have proof that it started in Aachen. Like we can see that we can see it in Aachen, even if there were Visigothic influence in France. And something that's especially interesting is that the Franks themselves, through forgeries and stuff, will try to legitimize the status of the Filioque themselves and against the papacy for a while. So after the Synod of Athens, you have Pope Leo III, which is the same one that crowned him, who posts silver shields, leaves a creed on it, saying you cannot change a creed, and makes direct equivalencies between the Greek and the Latin. One shield was in Greek, another was in Latin. So no question about, oh, it's just language, we don't understand one another. No, it was clear. We had hundreds of years to sort it out. And Charlemagne tries to legitimize all this against the Byzantine Empire. And something that Checheskin misses is that in Gregory of Tours, with the author of the same book we've just mentioned, the book starts with a creed, a reading of the creed. And if you have the Penguin edition, as I do, you will see that it says the Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. And if you go to Min, to the PL, Patrologia Latina, you will see that there's a footnote that literally says, oh, we can find this in every manuscript since this Frankish codex. This is Frankish codex from the Somme, which is the same place that we also believe the Athanasian Creed, which is another famous forgery, comes from. And Min literally states this. It tries to preemptively says, oh, don't worry, it was added, but it's fine, and it's in order to honor the councils of Spain, the Council of Toledo, Isidore of Seville, and stuff like this. So there's this whole legitimization of this. But in the book that talks about the history of the Franks, they had to modify it themselves.
Yeah,
that's something crazy. We found it. It's in the book. I know it's not yet in George's book, but we found it on an old Discord thanks to our team. People who know Latin, Greek. So yeah.
Let me. There's a section I want to read just a little bit from the Philippides book on this, where he says, with the Lateran Synod, the Pope had aspired to incorporate the Franks into the Orthodox camp. By offering them for the first time the honor of participating in the Synod, he hoped to keep them more committed to him in view of the future Longobards expansionist aims. However, history proved him wrong. The Franks soon afterwards embarked on their own expansionist wars without showing any respect towards Orthodoxy or the Romans. Nevertheless, this synod also had a secondary significance. One of its important decisions was the unconditional support for the veneration of icons. In fact, the epistles of the patriarchates of Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem were in favor of icon veneration, and they were read and recited during the synod. At the same time, however, as in every synod, the confirmation of acceptance of the decisions preceding the ecumenical synods was repeated. It was underlined that the correct faith is defined only by the ecumenical synods, and the symbol of faith was also recited. The Frankish bishops unanimously agreed with all these decisions and declarations. The Christian church continued to be united and indivisible up into 770 AD, with the exception of Constantinople's error on the side of Economaki. However, scarcely 20 years had gone by when the Franks changed their stance altogether and rejected everything that they had accepted during the Lateran Synod. They disregarded the unalterable status of the symbol, the creed, by adding Filioque. They rejected the exclusivity of the ecumenical synods for defining dogma by officially recognizing the arbitrariness of every secular leader or the Pope, something that had led the Latin Church into an authoritarian adventures in the centuries that would follow. They also rejected the veneration of icons, even after Constantinople had reverted back to orthodoxy and the veneration of icons. Having embarked on such actions, they began ever since to assert, and they continue to do so, that they were the ones who had preserved the true Christian faith, as opposed to the Byzantines, whom they systematically referred to. They systematically continued to slander for many centuries with their contra errores Graecorum, the forgeries. Right? As we've shown, that whole document is much